Troy Schrenk, Target Lodging, Chief Commercial Officer.
Well, thank you for joining us today on the Crude Live programs. Let's start off by, we do a weekly program up in the Bakken on Building the Bakken Radio on the Davis Refinery, first greenfield refinery, 40, 50 years being built in the United States. And I got a press release from their staff that you guys and Meridian have signed a letter of intent in terms of some housing. It's another one of those positive steps that the Davis Refinery is becoming more and more into fruition and reality. So before we get into some of the other activity going on, let's talk about that specific Bakken Davis Refinery Target Lodging relationship. So Troy, thanks for joining us today. And right out of the chute, what's going on up there in Belfield, North Dakota?
You bet, Jason. Thanks for having me, and we're pleased to be partnering with the Meridian Energy Group on their exciting project in the Bakken region. It's been a long time coming, as you probably are aware. The process that the ownership group has gone through to bring that project to life is extraordinary. And we're pleased to be a part of it, to be able to support that, great project in that part of North Dakota. We built the Dunn County Lodge, which is nearly a 600-bed turnkey lodging and hospitality lodging solution there, just about 8 miles north of Dickinson, North Dakota, back in 2012, to support upstream companies that were, producing oil in the area, and largely some other oil field service companies. And it was just a first-class facility with our employees in there delivering the service quality we've come to deliver on a daily basis. And then the downturn hit, as everyone was aware. 15 and 16, things were very soft, and we spent most of the time in that time period with Dunn County. Really had closed it up and had to set aside until the market would recover. So we're thrilled to be able to. We reopened it actually in October 2017. We started to see some recovery on the upstream oil and gas side. We started serving our first meals again in October of 17, and had reached pretty good occupancy in the Dunn County Lodge, and being able to support some of the same customers prior to the downturn. So fast forward now, middle of 18, being able to establish that relationship with Meridian Energy and supporting the temporary construction workers that will be working on that job.
So in addition to the Meridian Energy, you have some other camps up there, crew camps, some lodging. I forget what the correct terminology is these days, but how many total do you guys have up in the Bakken now, I guess, with Meridian?
Sure. So we currently own and operate 5 lodges and just shy of a total of 2,000 beds in the Bakken region. During the downturn, we were able to successfully relocate some of the lodges that we had built during the 2010-2014 boom, and relocated some of those lodges down to the Permian Basin, which of course is located in West Texas and southeast New Mexico. So, we're excited about the recovery, the signs of recovery that we've seen in the Bakken, and we think we're definitely with 5 lodges and the network to be able to support the crews throughout the region. We're in a very good position to support our customer base and continued oil and gas development in the region.
You mentioned Dunn County Lodge, which is close to Dickinson, which is by Belfield. Williston and Watford City, you're talking a few hours away from the southern tier of the Bakken. So I imagine, are the rest in the Watford City, Williston area?
So we have lodges located that's correct, Jason. Lodges located in Watford City that we currently own and operate as well. That lodge is seeing extraordinary occupancy at this time, and really has for the last several quarters. We're at or full capacity in Watford City. Again, that's a turnkey accommodation and hospitality facility. So, 24/7 meals, and all of our employees there are professionally trained hospitality staff. So Watford City. And then Williston, we have 2 locations in Williston, just west of town, West Williston. We have the Judson Lodge, which is a 100-bed facility, and then the Williams County Lodge, which is just right at 300 beds. And then, of course, we have we have another facility located there that we closed during the downturn, called the Williston Bear Paw Lodge, and we've since moved off quite a bit of the structures that were located on that site and relocated down to the Texas area.
Troy Schrenk, our guest, Target Lodging, and I'll give you folks a minute to grab a pen and paper, because some of the things he's talking about are these signs that we often talk about, the economic indicators, and of course lodging is a very big part of it. So up in the Bakken, we were talking about the Meridian Energy Group moving ahead with the permit to construct from the North Dakota Health Department with the air quality permit. And then you mentioned the other camps that you guys have in Watford City, Williston, Stanley area. Is it safe to say that the activity is picking up like a lot of the media has been reporting? Because I know a lot of times the media gets ahead of the actual part into speculation and then that sort of thing. But if you guys are filling your beds up once again, that to me sounds like a surefire indicator that this energy boom is back in the boom status, huh?
Well, it definitely is, and in this instance, we actually think the media was behind, which is ironic. But we actually saw a good solid pickup of activity a couple quarters ago. You could, measured by the number of crews that were moving into the area, the amount of horsepower, or equipment, as some of the oilfield service companies like to call it, moving into the area. The number of frac fleets and crews has increased over the last several quarters, which increases the number of number of men and women working in the area. So, I think the media in this instance has actually just confirmed what we had been seeing on the front end several quarters ago. And look, we're optimistic. We expect some good things out of the Bakken region much sooner than we anticipated, frankly. We thought it might be a little slower pace to recovery, but given some of the challenges that have been presented down in the Permian Basin related to takeaway capacity, we're starting to see some capital investment flowing back into other shale plays, and one of which is the Bakken, where the economics are, have improved significantly as it relates to being able to, extract the oil. But clearly, the price of oil has helped. But look, the takeaway capacity is in the Bakken, with the Dakota Access Pipeline and others coming into fruition. I think it really positions the Bakken as the shale play that it was before, and will continue to be on a go forward. So we expect great things to come. And only just continued improvement for the Bakken.
Transition to Texas for a moment. You mentioned the Permian, some of the issues down there, and so some of the capitals opening up in the other shale plays like the Bakken. I just saw this recently where the Eagle Ford has now got some new projections that are going to make investors very happy too. So there's another shale play that could come back into the limelight like it was probably 4 or 5 years ago. The Eagle Ford had its day in the sun for a little bit. That went away, but could come back. Haynesville, I'm hearing that rumbling again. How are you guys doing down in Texas? You guys are you in the Permian? Are you in the Eagle Ford or any of the other shale plays in the area?
Yeah, Jason, it's very exciting. We're since 2012 we've had a flag in the ground in the Permian Basin. In fact, we were first in the market with a turnkey lodge in Pecos, Texas, which is really the epicenter of the Delaware Basin, which is part of the western part of the Permian play. And so this will put it into perspective for you, Jason. In 2012, we built an 80-bed facility in Pecos, Texas. And fast forward 6 years later, that lodge today sits with over 800 beds on location at full capacity, with a roster full of oil and gas and energy customers that is broad and diverse. We're excited about our position there in Pecos, Texas, and as a result of that, last year we've grown our network significantly. You might hear me use that terminology, network, and I'll explain that, oil and gas has changed, even, during the downturn. They've gotten a lot more efficient. We have to match our customers' requirements on the lodging side. When you look at efficiency and flexibility and being able to move about the basin with flexibility and speed, we've designed and we've built a 7-lodge network across the Permian, similar to that of the Bakken, but with over almost 3,500 beds, just shy of 3,500 beds, from tip to tip, covers the geographic area of the Permian Basin. Offers the customer base just a very, very flexible, consistent offering across the network, and tremendous growth. So, the Bakken boom that occurred, that we all know, in 2010 to 2014, the Permian is booming now, and getting the crews off of the roads, the other 12 hours that they're not on location, keeping them safe, fit for work every day is our top priority. I mean, and the only way you can deliver on that is to have a network of lodges. You cannot have a singular location and be able to service these crews and these hardworking men and women and keep them safe so they can return home to their families when they go off hitch. So the answer is yes, wholeheartedly, the largest in the Permian Basin. We're excited about what that basin has to offer. We see continued growth in that marketplace as they continue to expand their takeaway capacity in the region. So, all good things coming out of Texas and New Mexico at this point.
And I've seen a lot of reports where 70% of the shale drilling is going to come out of the Permian, out of the shale United States drilling over the next 20, 30 years, because it's so thick compared to a lot of the other shale plays. So very smart, very interesting strategy down there in Texas with the network. And, like you said, much like up in the Bakken, where if you understand the Bakken with the Dickinson, Watford City, the Willistons, and even Stanley, the only thing you're missing, I guess, is Tioga at that point, but that's so close to Stanley that it's, it's almost a horse apiece. So It is. And Jason, I think you might remember we actually had a lodge in Tioga that supported the construction of the gas plant in that area. It was about 1,000-bed facility, and it served its purpose. We still have some infrastructure there, but we have moved off most of that lodging facility down to the Texas market because, it was really purpose-built. So Tioga, frankly, I miss that area. It's a great little town. If the market recovers and there's drilling and completion activity in that area and we're needed, we wouldn't hesitate. We'd go back in. Yeah, and I forgot about that gas plant and the LNG facility, and those are a lot more permanent jobs too, as opposed to like a Stanley or a Ray or some of the smaller towns that just don't, they don't have that facility like that. So, all right. Well, hey, I was going to ask you. A lot of times, what I remember about when I interviewed Brian Lash a number of years ago, I want to say like Halliburton was one of his big customers when they went over and did some Olympics, and then they did some housing overseas for the Iraq War. And of course, I got thinking right away, Target and Halliburton, those are big companies. So without, sounding tactful or anything like that, how big of a company, do you guys deal with? I mean, is it smaller companies, big companies? Just kind of talk to me a little bit about who your customer base is.
Sure. Well, that's a good question. And look, Brian's comments about working with Halliburton would remain true today. So when you look at, we call them partners or like-minded partners, right? Because, and you'll say, well, what does that mean, Troy? It sounds like a fancy marketing term or phrase. It's not every company that is willing to make the investment in their people. In fact, some companies just frankly don't. and they'll put their crews, their men and women, in what we call man camps. And there are plenty of man camps. When the Bakken boom first cycled up, you saw man camps scattered across the pastures of North Dakota. Those are camps. There are companies that are willing to invest in their worker the other 12 hours that they're not on location. And it's companies like Halliburton that are willing to do that because they see the return of getting a better worker each and every day, a safer worker each and every day, and a more loyal worker each and every day. So how do they do it? They do it with a true turnkey lodging solution that addresses those factors the other 12 hours, right? And they partner with Target. Now, it is a like-minded partner. They're committed to a fit worker, a more productive worker, a more loyal worker. And so if you just provide housing in a man camp situation, and there are companies that do, you're not going to get those benefits. So a like-minded partner for Target is a company like a Halliburton and other large oil field service companies that would be peers to a Halliburton. Okay, so that when you look at that customer or that like-minded partner, absolutely the oil field service category and peers of Halliburton. Okay, and then look, you even got to look further upstream in the supply chain, and you look at companies like Hess, where we purpose-built that facility. It's not uncommon for an exploration and production company. You know, let's take the Permian Basin for example. Right now, you have it's in the press, it's in the media that some of the super majors have entered that market. They will not go into that market without the proper infrastructure. And what I mean by proper infrastructure is a bona fide, proven solution for housing and the care of their people. Man camps will not work for the super majors, right? An organized solution that we've provided and have a proven track record for, and proven track record with our customers, that's the type of solution that the super majors will require. So this isn't, and so I've talked about some big companies, and I can say I think everyone knows who the majors and super majors are. And then conversely, smaller companies, a few employees to a couple of hundred employees that are operating in these areas, have found that their ability to recruit and retain a workforce and build their workforce out has been successful because they have partnered with a company like Target Lodging, right? And so we have small companies, crane companies that have come in, sand companies that have come in, water hauling companies that have come in to new markets, into the Permian and other markets, and said, look, we need an advantage for recruitment and retention. We see that advantage in partnering with a Target Lodging company that can deliver that. So it's every customer in between, that super major all the way down to the small operator that's just getting his business started in the basin. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. And the reason I asked was I didn't know if you did the smaller companies or not. You know, I wasn't sure, and so I'm glad that you were able to point that out, because what my experience with Target was just almost, I hate to say military, but it was so well regimented for the employees. Families really liked it a lot, especially people who are, working from afar. And, the guys, the term that I kept hearing over and over again was brotherhood. And that's what made me think of the Army, was that, there's certain rules and regulations, hey, guess what, guys? You're not gonna be out carousing all night long. We got right. Curfew. Yeah, at least they had curfews. I don't know if they do anymore.
Well, it depends. It depends on the customer. Some have implemented a curfew, and again, I think, Jason, to your point, this brotherhood concept. I mean, it runs thick and it runs true in the oil field, in the patch, and you get into an environment where you're living with 400 or 500 other men and women that are working 12 and 14-hour days on location. And you're coming back to a lodge at the end of the day, and there is a sense of brotherhood or even sisterhood, because it's changed. I mean, the workforce has changed, both demographics gender, ages, from a millennial workforce, it has changed. And so what we're seeing is this, a customer saying, look, I want you on location to be safe. I want you on location to operate my equipment without incident. I want to get better throughput. In order for us to do that, this is the customer talking, we got to make sure we handle the other 12 hours, right? That you're not on location. And so this code of conduct that you're referring to, yes, we have a code of conduct, 0 tolerance, no alcohol, no drugs, no cohabitation, those types of things. They're written rules, but it comes down to the brotherhood or the sisterhood of the people that live in our lodges that self-police, that enforce those rules, because, look, everyone wants to return to the job site the next day a better worker, right? Fit for work, well-rested, well-fed. So, it's easy to have those code of conduct, rules in place, but it's another thing for your guests to be able to self-police, and that through that brotherhood, as you say.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've always even said about, with our interviews that we do in our platform. We've chosen to go the non-political route and more the informational and more the civil conversations, that sort of thing. And the one thing I always tell people is the oil and gas industry really self-polices themselves on so many different areas. And in my area, you're not going to talk about things that you don't know about, because you got shareholders listening and there's always attorneys out there and all kinds of different things. So people don't speak outside of their wheelhouse very often in the oil and gas industry. And because of that, kind of that self-policing, you go out to a rig. If people are going to do things outside of the wheelhouse, well, that's people's lives on the line. So that's right. It really, that whole, we're looking out for each other, not brotherhood or sisterhood, humanhood, I guess, is what we got to start saying now. But really, it just becomes an energy family, Yeah,
it is, Jason. I like how you've described it. This energy family, or this culture that the people have created. And we can say all these great things about the HS&E departments of all the companies, and look, they're needed, and they actually, they have value. But for the people to create that culture, to really live that culture in that energy family, as you say, that's really where it's made. And we're happy to be a part of that. We provide, as you just said, we provide a platform for that to take place. People often ask me, well, what do you do? And I said, we're a hospitality company. We just happen to provide housing. And you talk to someone who does man camps, and they'll say, hey, what do you do? And they'll say, we build man camps. And that's okay. That's exactly what they do. But there's a difference, and hopefully, your audience and listeners have gleaned the difference today, because I think unfairly, well, not even unfairly, I think fairly, the man camp companies have established themselves just as that, a housing provider only, a provision for housing, and that's it. So, and that's okay for certain people. But for the people that we're talking about in the energy family, they're expecting a lot more these days.
Well, I'd like to give guests the final word. Anything we forgot, anything you want to reiterate? That way the question isn't framed by me at all, so the floor is yours.
Well, Jason, again, I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today. It's always a pleasure. I know the last time you talked to Brian, and I think as we look at our business and the business on a go forward, it's continuing to be innovative. It's continuing to listen to your customers, and support those customers, wherever they go and wherever they need to be. And I think that's always been our model. It will continue to be our model. We see some exciting things happening in the shale plays in the U.S. We're happy to be a part of that. I think you'll see some exciting announcements in the coming weeks and months ahead, with targets, continued growth and expansion to be able to help service our customers, and frankly to help create more jobs and create the economic benefit, and continue on with the prosperity for the solid U.S. worker, and great women and men in the industry. And again, we're a small part of that, but we're very happy to be a part of that. And again, thanks for having me on today.